shattered happiness. Chapter 1, A Chance Encounter. It was late evening, and the spring rain lightly tapped against the windows of New York City apartments. The city continued its usual rhythm, cars hurried down the streets, people hid under umbrellas, rushing home. For 28-year-old Chloe Parks, it was just another evening, like many others over the past few months. She had just left the office of the advertising agency where she worked as a copywriter and was heading toward the subway station. Chloe looked tired. Her chestnut hair was neatly tied in a ponytail, and her dark brown eyes reflected exhaustion. She hadn't felt her usual enthusiasm for some time now. Work had become less of a source of joy and more of a way to avoid the emptiness that followed after her recent breakup with her former boyfriend. Their relationship had lasted almost 3 years, and when he decided to end it, Chloe's world fell apart. And on this evening, on a rainy and noisy New York street, her life unexpectedly changed. At an intersection, near the glowing sign of a cafe, she suddenly bumped into a tall man hurrying toward her. The collision was abrupt, she dropped her umbrella, and his phone slipped out of his hands. "Sorry," they both said at the same time. The man, slightly flustered, quickly picked up the umbrella and phone, handing them to Chloe with a slight smile. "I apologize, I was too lost in my thoughts," he said, smiling. "It's all right," she replied, a little embarrassed, meeting his bright blue eyes. This was Mark Stevens, a 32-year-old architect who had recently returned to New York after a long assignment in London. Tall and lean, with short, light brown hair and a calm, confident posture, he caught Chloe's attention with his appearance and manners. But something about his eyes seemed familiar, as if they had met before. "Maybe I can make it up to you by buying you a coffee?" Mark suggested, noticing Chloe still standing there, trying to gather her thoughts. Chloe hesitated, but then, feeling a sudden desire to break out of her usual routine, agreed. Chapter 2, First Introduction. The cafe was cozy and warm, its windows fogged up from the heat as the rain continued to quietly patter outside. At a small wooden table, Chloe and Mark sat across from each other, enjoying cups of hot coffee. The cafe's atmosphere was relaxing, soft light from lamps and quiet music created a cozy, almost intimate setting. "What do you do?" Mark asked, breaking the silence as they both stirred their drinks. "I'm a copywriter, working at an ad agency," Chloe replied, sipping her coffee. "And you?" "I'm an architect. Just got back from London. I've been working there for the past 2 years, but now I'm starting a new project here in New York." Chloe noticed that he spoke easily, but there was a hint of weariness behind his words. Like her, he had clearly been through tough times. They spent several hours talking about work, life in New York, and traveling. Mark turned out to be an attentive conversationalist, interested not just in his projects, but also in how Chloe lived. A warm friendship began to form between them, one that promised to grow into something more. Chloe, who had been suffering from her recent heartbreak for so long, suddenly felt her heart begin to stir again. Chapter 3, Growing Affection. Weeks passed. Spring in New York was in full bloom, parks were green, streets were filled with people enjoying the first warm days. Chloe and Mark began seeing each other more often. They walked through Central Park, visited galleries, and exchanged thoughts and feelings. One evening, as they sat by the Hudson River, watching the sun slowly dip below the horizon, Mark broke the long silence. "Chloe," he began, his voice full of tenderness, "I know we haven't known each other long, but with you, I feel like I've known you all my life. You've become an important person to me." Chloe froze. She felt the same way, but her heart still tightened at the memories of her past. She was afraid to open up again, afraid that she might lose someone dear to her once more. "I feel it too, Mark," she replied softly, looking into his eyes. "But I'm scared of being hurt again." Mark took her hand and squeezed her fingers gently. "I won't hurt you, Chloe. We can take it slow if you need time." His words made her heart flutter. She realized she was ready to take the risk, to feel love again. Chapter 4, Shadows of the Past. Summer arrived. The city heat made people seek shade under the skyscrapers, and Chloe and Mark continued to enjoy their relationship. But with each passing day, Chloe noticed that Mark was becoming more withdrawn and tense. She couldn't understand what was happening, but she felt that shadows from the past were beginning to envelop them both. One day, as they sat in Mark's stylish apartment overlooking Central Park, Chloe, feeling increasingly anxious, decided to ask the question that had been bothering her. "Mark, what's going on? I've noticed you've been different lately. Are you hiding something from me?" Mark looked down and stayed silent for a long time. Then, sighing, he began. "Yes, there's something I should have told you earlier. But I didn't know how you would react. All this time, I've tried to leave it behind, but it won't let go of me." Chloe froze, unsure of what to expect. "A few years ago, I was in a serious relationship with a woman. Her name was Anna. We loved each other, but she died under tragic circumstances. And I blame myself for her death. Even though it was an accident, I can't shake the guilt." These words shocked Chloe. She realized that behind Mark's confident exterior was a deep pain he had been trying to hide. Now it became clear why he sometimes distanced himself from her. His heart still couldn't let go of the past. Chapter 5: A Test of Love. One evening, Chloe met with her friend Kate at a trendy bar in Brooklyn. As they discussed the events of the past few weeks, Chloe told her about Mark and his confession. "That's strange," Kate said, "but I've heard something about that accident. Anna was a well-known figure in New York, and many people talked about her tragic death. But I never heard that Mark was her lover." Chloe began to think. Everything Mark had told her seemed true, but something kept bothering her. She decided to learn more about what had happened on that fateful day. A few days later, after finding old articles and news reports, Chloe began to realize that things weren't as simple as they seemed. Anna's death had raised many questions, and Mark had been suspected in her death at the time. However, there was no evidence to prove his guilt, and the case had been closed. Chloe found herself facing a difficult choice: to trust the man she had fallen in love with or rely on her suspicions. She decided to confront Mark directly. Chapter 6: Confession. That evening, Chloe met Mark at their favorite cafe on the edge of the city. The sun was already setting, painting the sky in warm shades of orange and pink. 2 cups of coffee sat on the table between them, but the atmosphere was far from the usual lightheartedness. "Mark," Chloe began, feeling her heart tighten in her chest, "I've learned more about what happened with Anna. You should have told me everything from the beginning." Mark turned pale. He remained silent for a long time, then finally looked up, as if making a heavy decision. "You're right. I wasn't entirely honest with you. That day, a few years ago, I was with her when it happened. We argued, and she left in a bad mood, and then the accident occurred. I tried to fix things, but it was too late. I didn't kill her, but I can't shake the feeling that it was my fault." Chloe felt tears well up in her eyes. She hurt for him, for the guilt he had carried for years. But she also understood that their relationship couldn't continue if he didn't let go of the past. "Mark, I love you. But you need to forgive yourself. Otherwise, we can't move forward." Mark lowered his head, his shoulders shaking from the inner turmoil. Finally, quietly, he said, "I'll try. For you. For us." Chapter 7: A New Dawn. Months had passed. Summer was ending, and fall was already beginning to paint New York in golden and red hues. Chloe and Mark continued their relationship, but now they were more open and honest with each other. One morning, they met in the park, where leaves slowly fell to the ground, glowing in bright colors. They walked hand in hand, enjoying the crisp autumn air. "You know," Mark said, squeezing her hand, "despite all the challenges, I'm glad I met you. You gave me hope for the future." Chloe smiled, her heart finally filled with love and peace. "I am too, Mark. We'll get through anything as long as we're together."